The Dice Tower, episode 626.
Top horror games. Hoo ho ha ha ha.
Ooh, oh, ha, 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 ha.
Is this going to be one of those times where I am showing that I don't really know what I'm talking about because I don't know who this is?
It was the Monster Mash. It was a graveyard smash. It caught on in a flash.
When I had, when I used, not Spotify, what's the thing I used to use? The Pandora.
Okay.
So I made a channel based on Monster Mash. I thought, hey,
Okay.
There's got to be other songs like this. And you know what? There are. There are a lot of these graveyard smash type songs. The problem with
goofy Halloween novelty songs, okay.
They all sound the exact same.
Okay.
So that's probably the only one that's worth it.
I imagine Purple People Eater ends up on that list, too.
Maybe. But that one's like a different song. I don't even know.
Sure.
I don't even know how to spin that one.
I mean, they tend to go together. Like, if you're getting a collection of silly music, you're going to end up with Monster Mash and Purple People Eater next to each other on the track list.
Yeah, so if you're joining us, this is a show that's about board games and the people who play them.
Yes, why isn't there a game about a Purple People Eater? That's what I'd like to know.
Is that really what you want to know?
It's something that just I want to know now.
All right. Anyhow, we're here to talk about board games. And we got a lot of games to talk about, and there's a lot of things to talk about. But before we talk about those, if you are listening, if you are watching our show or whatever you're doing, I would like to invite you to Dice Tower East. Dice Tower East, the registration for that is going live probably a week after you hear this, October 8th at noon Eastern Standard Time.
All right.
Or Eastern Daylight Time, whatever. Everyone always is like, there's always like one guy's like, what do you mean exactly? Nobody is on the other time. Right?
Yes, right. Well, I mean, there are some regions that don't do daylight savings time.
Yes, but not in the Eastern zone.
They're rogues.
Florida actually voted to stay in daylight savings time all year round.
Oh. Well, that'll be confusing.
Well, it hasn't been approved by the Congress.
Oh.
And it never will be, because getting them to agree on anything is whatever. But also, they're not going to do it unless all the states agree to do it, right? Because, again, like you said, it would be confusing. But I wish we would just get rid of this nonsense.
It would make sense. I mean, there's all sorts of studies that say that daylight savings time is a big old mess, and it shouldn't happen.
It's really easy, though, to just stop doing it.
I think so. We all get used to it, and then we just don't change anymore. They'd have to reprogram all the computers.
Well, anyway, Dice Tower East is a continuation of sorts of Dice Tower Con. Sharon Madden is the director of that, and she and Nina, who many of you have met at Dice Tower Cons in the past, they're running this, they're putting everything together, and I know there has been a lot of non-information out there in the past months because we've been working on things behind the scenes and hotels and all that jazz, and we want to make sure that it's right. It's going to be at the Florida Mall Hotel. It's called the Florida Hotel. Mm-hmm. That's connected to the Florida Mall, which is this really cool, big, giant mall. And so we've solved the two biggest problems from last year. Parking and food, boom, are both fixed.
Good.
So this hotel, by very nature, not to get into all the details, but just by very nature of basically us running the con on our own, there's a huge price jump for us if we go to a bigger con. To get conventions that are 3,000 or so is it's very easy for you to lose a lot of money because there's fewer of those hotels. So we have a smaller one here, and if this one does well, we will see if we might slowly grow it, but we want to have as intimate as a convention as we can. And so we're trying to make everything right, so you'll be able to go in, get your hotel. In fact, that's the only way to get the hotels is to go through our website. which I think is useful because then people won't try to scalp or get hotels like the year ahead of time or whatever.
Okay.
We have the Florida hotel, but we also have several other hotels in the area, and we got a 24-hour shuttle going around to these hotels.
Oh, cool.
Right, so you'll be able to come. And the thing I'm most excited about is the library.
Yes.
Eric has seen the library.
I helped assemble the library.
That's true. Well, we don't have to do it again.
Yay! We don't have to do it again.
Yeah, this year when we do the cruise, we're just going to open up the things and basically straighten out the games.
That is so exciting.
Hopefully, that's all we have to do.
That's so exciting. Oh, yeah, we get to see what the state of... Because this will be the next event post-retreat. So it'll be the first time we've opened up the library to see what state it's in.
Yeah, so Dice Tower Library, it has been returned to its home. And so I went and checked it out the other day, and I was pulling out the different shelves, and I was grabbing some things or different games off the shelves, and I noticed a few games were a little messier than I would like them to be. And I said, no problem. I will go in there an hour a week up until the cruise and just spend some quality time, fixing those games and straightening them out and everything.
Just communing with the cardboard.
Okay, you laugh at that, but I'll tell you what, the storage unit is air conditioned. It's really nice. It smells very clean, and I think that's because it's brand new. We moved into one that just opened up, right?
Nice.
And I'll put on some music, like on a little speaker there, and I think I can commune in there. So
it's Tom's alone time with the library. I like it.
I think you would like it.
I probably would.
Yes. So, anywho, so Dice Tower East is going to have this library. So people have been asked about the cost. The cost for Dice Tower East is $125, but that's really only the cost if you don't use one of our hotels. If you use one of our hotels, it's $100. And that's because whenever you use one of our hotels, it helps towards the rooms, the big ballrooms that we have for the convention itself. I'm going to try to get Sharon to come and do a live Q&A video so we can answer more questions with that regards. And we'll have exact pricing on the hotels, but there is like a tiered structure. We had a cheaper hotel, a medium hotel, and then you can stay at the Florida hotel itself. Okay. Hopefully all this stuff will be clear, but we'll be there to answer, and Nina and Sharon will be helping to answer these questions too. I'm really excited about it. I'm sure there will be bumps and things as times go by, but right now, I'm really happy. I'm excited, and I can't wait for it. Well, I guess I can't. I can wait for it because we have Dice Tower West, which is still, you can register to go to that, and Dice Tower Cruise first.
Yes, indeed.
Also, there's something called Essen. That's happening in a few weeks.
Oh, yeah. Yes, and if anyone's been asking, we are planning to do a big Essen preview show with all four of us, Mandy, Suzanne, Tom, and myself. We just need to start pouring through the Essen release list and figure out what we want to talk about.
Is that in 2 weeks or 3? I think that's in 3 weeks from today.
Don't ask me these questions, Tom. It's something like that. I think it's on the horizon for sure.
Okay, well, I am looking forward to all of this. It's going to be exciting. But right now, I think we need to talk about some games, and so we'll start with Eric.
Alrighty. So this was one of my must-acquire games at Gen Con this year. It is called Rail Pass. This is designed by Ref Tom Green and published by Mercury Games. Tom Green's been running this around various conventions for a while in prototype form, had built out these locomotives and cubes, and I've seen it sort of here and there for a while, but it was finally released in production form from Mercury Games this year. Rail Pass is a cooperative, real-time dexterity pick-up and deliver game. There are 6 stations that are just sort of cardboard mats, one for each color. And at the beginning of the game, you distribute all these cubes so that none of the cubes are already where they need to be. So, no red cubes on the red station, no blue on the blue, etc. And so you've distributed all the cubes. And they're in sort of this line at the top of each of the mats. And you can only load cubes from one of the 2 ends of the line. And you have 2 locomotives at each station, one small that can hold 3 cubes and one large that can hold 5. If you're playing the advanced version, there are also little stickers on them that say, well, you can only put a blue cube in that slot. You can only put a white cube in that slot. Or you can play the basic version where you can just load up however you want. And you have two slots, two tracks on each station, one that can hold a large track, or one that can hold only a small track, only a small train, and one that can hold either a large or a small train. And you also have little pegs that represent the engineers. The three that you start with are your color, or that station's color. But you can swap them out. As long as there is one peg on a train, it can go somewhere. And you start the timer. And depending on how many people you have a certain amount of minutes. It's 10 minutes if you have 6 players. It's less if you have fewer players because you have more personal control, I guess. You can coordinate better with yourself. And you must load cubes onto these trains and pass them to your teammates. And when you pick one up and send it somewhere, you have to say choo-choo or toot-toot. I forget exactly how you make a train
I feel
noise.
like either would be allowable in my group.
Sure. We'll play fast and loose with the rules here.
I'm going to require train whistles to be brought.
And
you have to hold them in your mouth and blow those.
So you send the train to someone, and based on the layout of the table, you may have a certain number of neighbors. You might have a track that goes across the table. It might have to go through a tunnel, like a physical object that you then have to pass the train through, or you might have blockades that block off some of the routes. And you have to get the cubes where they need to go, but you can't load or unload unless it's docked, and you can only hold so many trains in your hand. You can only hold one in each hand. So you're passing and twisting and holding, and my hands are full. There's usually somebody, some end of the table that just gets like overloaded. All the trains come to them at once. They're like, I can't do anything. It is a good amount of fun, but silly fun. And with 6 players, it's pretty loose. With 6 players, and we actually didn't have too much trouble completing the game. At the end of the game, you take your 2 lowest scoring stations and multiply them. If you get over 100, you win. So a 10 and a 10 would get you, if those were your 2 lowest scoring stations, that would win the game. There are always 6 stations, no matter how many people you're playing with, though. So if you're only playing with 5, somebody has 2 stations, 2 different colors. And the time we did that, the setup had a blockade in between my 2 stations. So they were red and white, I think. So if I had a white cube that was at the red station, I actually had to send it all the way around the table to get to my white station. I couldn't just pass it over. That made things much more difficult. The coordination, when you start adding in the complications, the blocked paths, the tunnels, all the extra stuff, and the running multiple stations at once, and the lower time limit, make this a much more difficult game with fewer players. I did like this. I think this is going to hit the table at conventions. In fact, I'm going to a convention this weekend. I should bring this with me. And see some, for quick, silly, with a little bit of thinking, fun of pick up and deliver. There is nothing else that I know of that is like Rail Pass, so I'm very glad I picked it up. Thumbs up from me for Rail Pass.
We just opened it today, actually. On our channel. I really like the train pieces. They look cool.
They came together very well, yeah.
So I think of the 3 of us here at the Dice Tower Studio, I'm going to be the person who likes the game.
Yeah, well, I know Z is already upset. Anytime a game makes him say something, he's going to be
hates that.
Against that.
He hates that. If I ever made a personal game for him, it would require so much of that.
It does say specifically in the rule book, this is mandatory when it talks about making the choo-choo noises.
Okay, so I'm going to talk here a little bit about a game called Chocolate Factory. Now, Chocolate Factory is from Alley Cat Games, and they make very thematic games. The last game I got from them was Dice Hospital, which was about treating people in a hospital. Your dice came in, and the more pips they got was to show how much the patient was sick, and you didn't want them to die. You want to heal them. Or maybe it was the fewer pips. Anyway, one of the things. In this game, you're running a chocolate factory, and each round of the game, you are taking turns drafting a piece of machinery or an employee. You get one of each. And then you will run your factory. So you'll run it for 3 shifts, and in each shift, you take this cardboard tile, and you put it on this conveyor belt and put a cocoa bean on it and push it. And so these cocoa beans are moving down your conveyor belt. And as they move into each section, you can do something with them depending on the machine that you have there. Maybe you can upgrade the cocoa bean to a piece of cocoa. Maybe you can upgrade a piece of cocoa to a candy bar. Maybe you can wrap a candy bar into a caramel, or box the caramel into a box of chocolates. And Then when they come off the conveyor belt, then you can sell them to stores, or the little corner stores that you kind of control, or big department stores. When you deliver to a department store, you move tokens in a track there, and at the end of the game, you get points for if you're the farthest ahead on the track. It's really fun. The whole moving the chocolates down the conveyor belt is very entertaining, and watching your little machines work on them, trying to figure out the best way to put them. If I put this machine here, I upgrade it to this, and then when I go here, this machine lets me upgrade that into something else. That's very satisfying, and it's a kind of game that everyone's playing at the same time. There's not actually a lot of interactiveness in it, other than the drafting of the parts, but once you take those, then everyone sits there and they just run their own machine for a while. And I found this to be really entertaining. I don't think a single player who either played it or watched it somehow could not keep the fact that they have seen I Love Lucy to themselves.
Okay.
I get it. Lucille and Ethel were at a conveyor belt with chocolates.
Did anybody start stuffing the components in their mouth?
Well, actually, so no, that didn't happen. But the one lady playing the game halfway through said, I can't control it, and went and bought a chocolate from the game store and ate that. And if it makes you feel better, I did this exact thing. It was today, or no, it was yesterday. I had a handful of pretzels and a handful of game components. I don't know why. And I was popping the pretzels in my mouth, and then I forgot which hand the pretzels were in. So I popped the game component in my mouth. Now, I didn't chew on it or anything, because you realize right away, not a pretzel. It was those little nugget pretzels, they're the same, and they were big, chunky wooden component pieces. So the moral of the story is, don't put both of those in your hand at the same time.
I want a t-shirt with like a meeple that says not a pretzel.
Anyhow, it's an exceedingly fun game, Chocolate Factory. It was a blast with everybody. There's certainly some luck in what components show up at what time and what corner stores want, but other than that, you've got to just try to run your machine as best as you can. It did have one interesting rule that I've never seen in a game before. So I said that there's these department stores that have different tracks on them, and whoever's the farthest on the track gets 16 pounds at the end of the game at points, and then whoever's second farthest gets 8 pounds, and third farthest gets 4 pounds. However, second place only gets their points / money if they are at least half as far as first place.
Oh, weird.
Well, what this does is it stops me from going, boop, I'll take 1 to get half the points you did. And you went all the way up to 9.
Right, okay.
And it also encourages you to move farther on a track because you slap that person in second place.
Yeah, that is interesting. Because usually in those sorts of things, if you go higher, the second place person is getting paid off. Like usually, second place in those sorts of games is low-hanging fruit.
Right, and third place even more so, because in this game you can just sit there and go, well, why should I? The first place is so far ahead, I'm not going to bother moving anymore. I don't know. I thought it was a unique rule. I don't know that I would want it in every game, but it worked well here.
Cool.
That's Chocolate Factory from Alley Cat Games. I want to talk now about a small indie game that most of you probably haven't heard of.
Yeah, tell me more.
So it's about history. It's called Tapestry.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
From a indie company called Stonemaier Games.
Indeed. I got to play this at the retreat as well, and brought it up 2 episodes back. And Tom's like, no, I haven't had a chance to play it enough yet. Wait. So this is finally when we get to talk about it.
So just as a rundown, Tapestry, if you're listening, we're just joking. Tapestry is easily the most hyped game of 2019, I think.
It seems that way. Yes.
Before we started here, I was telling Eric my numbers of people who watched my reviews, and Tapestry is already my 4th watched review of the year.
And it came out a week ago?
Yes. So,
okay.
Incidentally, my number 1 watched review of the year is Wingspan. So, which also
another
is from Stonemaier Games.
Small indie publisher, yeah.
So Tapestry, real quick, is a game that's based on history or building a civilization. Although, Eric, I found this out now, like later after the fact, it's not based on Earth.
Oh, okay.
It's like an alternate Earth or something.
Sure, it makes sense.
Well, the reason for that is because you get technologies in a weird order.
Yeah.
And so that's the explanation, which I think is a pretty weak explanation, frankly, but whatever. There are 16 civilizations in this game, and you pick one of these, and you're going to be playing over the course of 5 eras. In each era, you will take turns moving your pieces on 4 different tracks. There's a scientific track, a technology track, a colonization track, and what's the last one? I think it's warfare, maybe?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Something like warfare, right?
Yeah.
And each track, when you move on it, you'll pay a certain number of resources. There's 4 resources in the game. And the farther you go up a track, the more expensive these tracks become. But as you move up on the track, they give you special abilities. Like, for example, the science track often will let you roll a science die, which can move you up on other tracks faster.
Mm-hmm.
The technology track gives you technology cards, which you have a chance to advance these cards, and they give you bonuses. They're really not technologies. They're just cards that give you bonuses. The exploration lets you put new tiles on the board, map tiles, and colonization lets you, and the military one basically lets you expand your empire out on the board, giving you various points. Everything is like a big engine building part to this game.
Sure.
There's very little player interaction. You can attack somebody else, kind of, sort of. You take over their tile, but since each tile can only have 2 pieces, so if I put a token in a spot and then Eric conquers my token, by conquering it, it just means he controls the area, not me. But then I can't conquer it back because now there's 2 tokens there.
Right.
There's lots of different ways to get points in this game. One of the big things about the game is that you have your capital city, which is a 9x9 grid, which looks very similar to Sudoku. It has some dots on it that are terrain dots. They're basically just dots that are already filled in.
Right.
And as the game goes by, many times when you move up onto tracks, you get to put these little buildings in this grid. You want to fill up squares in this grid because that gives you resources. Mm-hmm. And you also want to fill lines and columns because that might give you points. Also, as the game goes by, if you move up onto tracks fast enough, or some of the technologies will give you really big buildings that will cover up anywhere from 4 to like 10 of these squares in different shapes. They look really cool. They're 3D painted pieces that are just, they cover up spots on the board.
Right, that's all they do. But they do look cool.
So, like I said, on your turn, you pick a track and move up on that track. Eventually, you'll run out of resources. Or maybe you decide to save a few resources and you go to the next era. And then you do a scoring round and you do some scoring and you get resources based on how many little buildings you've built. And then you will play a Tapestry card. This Tapestry card will either give you some outright points based on things you have done, or it will give you a special ability for the next era. After your 5th scoring, you're done. And it's very possible that you will be finished before other players, if maybe they're still in the 5th era or the 4th era or whatever before they do their final scoring.
Yep.
So, Eric, I think when you played at the retreat, right?
I did, yeah.
Did you play in a 5-player game?
It was a 5-player game, yes.
I would just say straight out, folks, never play a 5-player game of this. For 2 reasons. One, because the game, if you play 4 players, I think you can fit it on a normal table. Because you each play at a corner of the board and put all the pieces out. A 5th player, you're going to need a lot more space. Also, I think a 5th player is just going to take that much longer.
There's certainly a lot of thinking, and that was one of my chief criticisms here, is that you've got those 4 tracks, and there's all this symbology, these symbols that tell you what each of those things do. And that's not necessarily easy to grasp just by looking at it. There's this cheat sheet, 2 of them, I think, in the box that you can pass around. But you have to sort of absorb this entire series of tracks. I guess you only have 1 space on each of the tracks that you are next, that's your next space on that track. So you really only have 4 things that you're trying to decide if you want to do. But you still have to look at what's coming up on the track and figure out your strategy. There's just a lot to crunch here. And so there's a lot of opportunity for AP, analysis paralysis, as people try and process all that.
Yeah, I guess I didn't run into that as much as Eric did, mostly because I say move. I don't think the AP is that big of a deal in this game. I I want to start out by saying I really like the game. I think the engine building of it is fascinating. Which track to move up on? I've played enough games that I've tried every track now. And really, the science and technology tracks really work together, and the exploration and military tracks really work together. But I've tried the different strategies. I tried various things. I tried to fill up my grid, ignoring my grid. And so there's a lot of cool different things you can do. And the technology cards will be different. I don't know if it came up in your game, Eric, but there's even a technology card that gives you another civilization.
I actually I think I may have had 3 at the end. Because I got to the end of a track, got another civilization, then went backwards on the track, and then went to the end of the track again and got another civilization.
Ah, okay. Well,
Yeah.
I got another civilization, but it wasn't that exciting.
Yeah.
Because the civilization didn't work for me and what I had been doing in that game.
Sure.
So this is the thing. First of all, I think if you go into this looking to play a quote-unquote civilization game, you will be disappointed. It looks like a civilization game, but it's really not. There's no exploring. The land types that you put on the board don't really mean anything. When you put a tile down, you're just trying to match stuff that's next to it. You know.
Right.
The 4 different resources are people, food. I don't even remember what they are because it doesn't matter. They're all the same. All the technologies, they don't, like, when I played with Z, and the very first technology he got was time travel. You can't go up from there, you know? I think then he got, like, antibiotics for the next one or something. It was just kind of like, and I don't mind that, right? But if you're looking for that strong theming, yeah, you better go elsewhere. Like, the biggest culprit of this is those buildings. These buildings are huge, they look cool, and they all do the same thing. They just cover spots in the board.
Right.
And actually, one of the negatives about these buildings, besides the fact that they add to the price of the game, is that they don't cover the squares very well, actually. And they're hard to see. Once you put them up, it's hard to see the empty spots.
Yeah, I had trouble looking across the table because there's a little map where they sit when they're not claimed by anyone yet, and it's sometimes hard to see what space they fill from across the table. Like, is that a 2x2 or is that a 2x3? I'm not sure.
Yeah, and so I like the game a lot. I want to be clear in that, and I kept playing it because it was very enjoyable. But I do see a few flaws. To me, the biggest flaw of the game is that I don't believe the civilizations and tapestry cards, I wouldn't even say they're a little balanced. They feel fairly sometimes very imbalanced. You might just get a combo that rocks. And you might get a combo because your first tapestry card may not work with your civ.
Yep.
And some civs just feel weaker than others. In fact, there's 2 civs where one effectively nerfs the other one. Well, I don't know what came up in your game, but there's a civ, Eric, called the Chosen.
Okay.
And they score points at the end of each round, every time during a scoring phase, if they are the farthest ahead on each track.
Okay. And I see where this is going because I think I had this next civ.
The other civ is the Futurists.
That's me.
And they start at space 4 on every track, which is fine. It's not as overpowered as you think because the Futurists have to pay extra resources, but it definitely nerfs the other guy's power. He can push and struggle and pass a Futurist on one track, but that's it, probably.
Yeah.
So I felt like that was... I would have just put on the card, do not play these 2 civs together. Either way, this one is definitely going to get a lot of buzz. A lot of people are going to like it, but it's definitely not for everybody.
Yeah, I think I might be one of those people. I did enjoy it. I found it to be an interesting challenge. I like the way all the pieces fit together. It does look beautiful. But I'm one of those people that really doesn't like when someone messes with my stuff. And some of those tapestry cards are... You said there wasn't a lot of player interaction. There are some tapestry cards that are very interactive. Like, there's one that lets you take one of those buildings, just any one, and put it on your mat. Now, these are rewards for moving along a track. And so I was moving along my track. As the futurist, that was now my strategy. Move along the track as fast as you can. And as soon as I was about to claim one of the buildings, somebody played that Tapestry card and went, nope, that's mine now. And so now I don't get a reward for crossing that particular threshold. And then there's another card that lets you do somebody else's Tapestry card. And so somebody else, when I was about to claim a building, claimed that building.
Well, I like to say here, in the chat, and folks, if you're listening to this, we stream these live on Facebook. Edward Serpowski says, I was lucky enough to steal a big building from under Eric's nose.
See? Edward.
I didn't even know. I don't think that exact thing happened at any of my games. There's also those trap cards. So if you attack something, they can play a trap card, and it's like, booyah, you thought you were taking that. I took it from you.
And I actually know Edward worked very hard to get to the center of the board after the first person had done so and attacked. And he's like, okay, here's my triumphant attack. And they played a trap card, which means that you didn't win that battle, but you have now expended your opportunity to attack that hex, and you cannot go there anymore.
Isn't that weird? Like, what thematic nature is there to the rule that a spot can only ever have two pieces in it?
I think they just didn't want to have it be battling all the time, to have a tug of war for a particular space.
But you're not really fighting.
No.
I don't know. Either way, that's minor stuff. Again, I really did enjoy the game as I look at it as an engine building game. Kind of like when I play Race for the Galaxy. I don't actually feel like I'm building a big space empire. I'm just playing an engine building game that happens to have a space theme. That's what I'm doing with Tapestry. I'm playing an engine building game that happens to have a civilization theme.
Right. I do think that that maybe this is going to fall into the same category as Glory to Rome, where there are some card combinations and sequences that are considered to be super powerful and overpowered and like you can't get past this. But then there are several other combinations that are also super powered, overpowered, and can mess with everything. And it's just a matter of what comes up in a particular game.
Sure. Well, that's Tapestry from Stonemaier Games. We are going to now jump to Jeff Engelstein, but I want to say real quick, Jeff Engelstein's like awesome these days.
He was awesome before too.
I'm sorry, the world is finding out how awesome he is.
There we go. I like that.
You know that they redid the mechanisms on Board Game Geek, the biggest
They did, based on his book.
Jeff's book. Well, not just Jeff's book.
Jeff and Isaac Shalev, yep.
But now they did make it a little nerdier than it needed to be. And they've backed down from that. No, they did.
Oh, I missed that. Okay.
Well, they put the codes in front of all these mechanisms, and they're like, yeah, I guess most people don't want to see these codes. Like, yes. Most people don't want to see the codes. They just want to see the names of the mechanisms.
What codes? Like secret messages?
They would have a code that would be like MOV13, movement on a hex grid. Now it just will say movement on a hex grid, or something like that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, if you like codes, and some people do. Anyhow, it doesn't matter.
Is there a prize if you figure it out?
Let's jump to Jeff.
Saving.
Eric, you were correct about the Pacific Standard Time.
Oh, she thought it was the wrong time zone?
So, she said she'll join us in 2 weeks. Hello, chat. Someone said it looks like I climb a mountain before I come here. That is because there's lights shining right on my face here, and they're pretty bright lights. And I'm trying not to run too much air conditioning in my house while I do this. So when you see me in the studio, I try to make it so I look better there. Here I don't care as much most of the time. I mean, until just recently, we weren't even streaming these. Maybe I'll powder my face next time so I look better. Maybe if I move this here. Any questions while we're waiting for Eric?
I'm back. I'm ready.
Oh, never mind. Free.
Oh, you just canceled one of our discussion topics, but that's
no,
fine.
That's because it was with her.
Oh. Chat is like, who's her? Wouldn't you like to know?
We've narrowed it down to half the human race.
Yep.
You can guess who it is, and we'll tell you if you're wrong or not. That's a lie. We won't. All right. You just want to move right into questions?
I feel like, yeah, we should move into questions. And who wants to go first?
You go first, and we'll jump into this. Let me start
Okay.
recording, and it says I need a Dice Tower Funky to stand off screen and fan me.
With a palm frond.
I don't know what it is. Well, here we go.
Jarek says, my game group is in a heated debate about whether you should consider buying an expansion if it is the same price as the base game. My group says if the expansion is equal to the base game, then they would buy a different game instead. They are especially adamant about expansions that are not standalone, have less gameplay changes, have less components, or rarely hits the table. I explained that price has less to do with gameplay and more to do with quality or quantity of components, supply and demand, and economies of scale. Would you rather pass on an expansion because of its lack of content, ability to hit the table, simply that it is priced as much as the base game, or that it provides minimal change to the base game?
I'm kind of a mixed mind on this because initially I would say I don't care. I'd rather buy an expansion than a new base game because I know I like the base game, and so that price that I'm paying for it, it works, hey.
Yeah.
However, recently a few expansions have popped up. One in particular, the Roll for the Galaxy expansion.
Okay.
The new Roll for the Galaxy expansion is quite pricey. I want to say it's $90.
This is the This is the one with the an interchangeable dice, right?
Sure, and there's 3 modules in it, and Tom and the publisher both said truthfully that if they had sold those modules separately, they would be more expensive. And yet cheaper for me because I would not buy all 3 of them.
Yes, we talked about this last week. I had played and was sort of lukewarm on the whole concept.
So I know that expansions are usually, for what you get in expansion, it's usually more expensive than the base price you pay for the base game, but that is economies of scale. I don't care though, because for me, again, I'd rather get something I know I'll enjoy, because there's very few expansions for games that I like where I did not like the expansion. It's happened, but it's a rare thing.
Yeah, that's true.
There are many new games that I've gotten, and I was like, oh, I don't like that game at all.
I guess, like, boiling it down to Jarek's basic question, you have 2 boxes that are the same price. One is an expansion for a game you know, and the other is a new game. And I sort of agree. If I really like the game that the expansion is for, I may still lean toward the expansion because I already know I like that, as opposed to taking a chance on the new box. But I also agree that this is going to, the expansion is going to give you more of the same experience.
Right.
And then there's new things to be explored in the new game. I still think I lean toward this expansion for a game I like, but it's only if it's a game I like already. I'm not going to get an expansion just because it's an expansion for a game I own. Yeah.
All right. Well, David, you win the prize for one of the best questions I've had in a long time.
Okay.
I think I could run with this one as a whole discussion topic, but he says, at what point while explaining the rules for a game do you stop allowing a new person to join the table?
Oh.
I always feel bad, he says, when we say no to a new player because we're almost done teaching the rules and we'd have to start over. What's the point of no return? Board setup 25% or 50%? Maybe this is just you, Eric. How often does it happen where this seems like you're done, you look around, who's going to join me? Well, you don't have this because you guys do that weird thing. But
the pick list, yeah.
If you're in an open gaming situation, I'll sit there, some people will join. I'm like, we can take another player. No one's around. Fine. We can play this game with 3 players or 4 players instead of 5.
Yep.
I go through the rules, and we're like, are we ready? And I go, can I join?
Yes.
I'm serious. So, board setup, no way. In fact, I think 25%, again, when the person says, oh, you've already started explaining, I'm like, no, I just started.
Yeah.
At that point, from the 25% onwards, other factors come into play for me.
Mm-hmm.
One, how smart is this person? Not smart. That sounds bad. What I mean is, how well do they grok new games? They're like
Okay.
one of the main gamers in my group. Fine. I know that
Sure.
they'll understand it. You can pick up the stuff as we go. So
Yep.
that's easier. But two, are they new? And is there any other game they can join? Because I'm not going to not let them in my game and then they don't get into anything. So I'll teach the rules again if that's the case, because it's important that gamers have a good time.
Okay.
But after that, but if neither of those matters, if there is other open games, I'll be like, oh, there's an open game over there. Sorry, we already went over the rules. Maybe.
All right. There is something to be said for, later on after you've been through the rules, you may be able to summarize them more quickly.
Sure.
After a first
I
time.
could do that pretty well.
Yeah. I guess another factor is the setup going to be changed measurably by adding the extra player? Like often we'll, because we have 3 players sitting down, okay, let's start setting up based on a 3-player game. I may need to stack a deck or remove cards or do all sorts of stuff. And if that is then difficult to remedy when a 4th player sits down, then that will also be a resistance factor.
David also says, when you teach a game, do you go over the mechanisms or do you throw a few tips in there? Like he says, he gave an example, he says in Wingspan, deciding on the combo of your beginning food and cards, what are maybe gold cards that you kept, and so on and so forth. I will often do that if it's some major things. I might say, this is a good place to go, this is a good place to go, this is a great place to go. If you're not sure what to do, this is a good action to take. I will give some basic tips if I feel like there's tricky things that new players can fall into, or if the game has an overwhelming number of choices.
Yeah, I agree. My fear when I do something like that is that I don't want to necessarily lead new players down my favored strategy. I mean, it's rare that I'm teaching a game that I've played enough to be an expert on. I will sometimes, when the rule book has, tips for new players, I will read those because it's sort of the base level that the designers thought was worth passing on. So if those tips are there, I'll actually ask the table, do you guys want to hear these tips? And usually they say, yeah, let's hear what they suggest.
I don't know that I've ever had a player say no to that.
No, I don't want to know.
You know what I like? This might be going off topic. I also like when a rule book has things easily forgotten.
Oh, yes.
I will always read that section, everybody, too.
Yep. And that actually can help as a guide as well. The items usually forgotten will also sort of guide you as to important strategies and important points to keep in mind. It's almost as useful as the a few suggestions section.
Good questions, David.
Yeah. Ryan asks, if you could travel back in time to observe one game being developed, which game would you choose and why?
I've been thinking about this for a while, actually.
Really? Okay.
I don't know. Maybe Monopoly?
Oh, interesting.
Then I would know the real story behind everything. I mean, we know much of what happened. Like, it was Maggie, I forget her last name, who designed it.
Elizabeth Maggie,
sorry.
Is that her name?
Yes, I'm sorry, Lizzie Maggie. Anyhow, like, the Darrow stole it from her, but did he? Or how did it work?
Right.
There's obviously speculation. It'd be interesting to see what happened there. Or even, I would like to talk to her to see why she, someone who was opposed to monopolies in general, why she designed the game the way she did.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's an excellent book on the whole subject, but just being there would be really interesting.
Sure, but a lot of the people are no longer alive who were part of it.
Sure. I was also trying to think of what would be an interesting, complex game that I could see the tweaking of various things, and the one that came to mind was Through the Ages, to actually be able to see how they balance the different factions and leaders and which ones were popular, which ones got dropped out of the mix when they were trying things out. One way to sort of look back at this thing is designer diaries on Board Game Geek. It doesn't happen for every title, but it is sort of a neat view into the mindset of the designer when something's coming out.
I do like that.
Ryan also asks, in your personal opinion, and he highlights personal, so
as opposed
personal,
to my
just you.
Professional opinion.
Yes. What is the most underappreciated or underutilized thing in the modern board game industry? This could be anything such as an underutilized theme, mechanism, component type, packaging or presentation structure, simplicity, complexity, age group, appeal, genre, etc. Wow.
Restraint.
Restraint.
No, I'm serious. Like, hey, we're coming out with a new game. We have 72 expansions, 436 promos at launch. Calm down, everybody.
Interactive narration in an app form, particularly with a smooth voice that people trust in the gaming industry.
Self-serving thing I've ever heard, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
You know what? I do feel dirty. Forget I said that. No, but something like an interactive. I'm thinking of a more modern version of the VCR game, with actual interactive elements, video or audio clues that actually respond to gameplay. I think that's an area to be explored.
You know, I still remember. Do you remember? I don't know. It was like almost 10 years ago. Reiner Knizia made that King Arthur game.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it was supposed to be this revolution, but it turned out that the technology wasn't quite ready. You had to lick your fingers in order to use it properly, if I recall correctly. Like, the conductivity of the board didn't quite work. Plus, it was only in German.
Well, that's the thing. I was hoping someone would pick it up, and it never happened.
Yeah. But yes, that was a ways ago. That was like the big Essen release, and then it died pretty quickly when people played it, and it didn't work right.
Oh, there you go. Jimmy says, imagine you met a board game genie.
Okay.
Remember what I said to David earlier? I'm not necessarily saying this to Jimmy, but anyhow. A board game genie isn't like your typical genie. Instead of getting 3 wishes, you get to choose one of 3 wishes. So here are your options.
Okay.
Okay, 1. 90% of your board game collection will be upgraded with your dream components and dream art. The upgrades will make your jaw drop. The drawback is that 10% of the games in your collection will be erased from existence, never to be played again. You can't play your friend's copy because all copies have been erased, and these 10% is random.
Ooh.
Option 2. 70% of your board game collection will be upgraded the same way as option 1. 30% will be erased the same way, but you get to pick the games that are erased.
Okay.
Option 3. 10% of your board game collection will be upgraded the same way, and only 1 game from your collection will cease to exist and is picked randomly.
Okay.
You have to pick one of these options, says Jimmy. Otherwise, you lose all your games.
Okay. Well, yeah. So telling the genie, hey, what's that over there? And running the other way. I think I have to go with... I got to go with number 3. That makes the upgraded games more special, and I can cross my fingers that my absolute favorites are not one of the ones erased from existence. It has the least chance of taking out some of my favorites.
Yeah, for me, it's option 2. I could easily cut 30% of my games.
I guess, but the fact that they get erased from existence, like, it's not just you. You are taking that game away from everyone.
I can live with that, because then someone else will probably make the same game again.
Oh, I see. An interesting thought.
I'm not trying to cheese out by saying, I'll remember the games and then I'll make them all make a lot of money. What I'm saying is
that's a good idea.
There's a lot of copying and stuff that goes on. Someone would make a very similar game. We'll be fine.
Somebody would design something that fills that hole in the game space?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right.
Also, this genie sucks.
Exactly. Kirk says, many people use Monopoly as an example of a poor game that ruins many non-gamers' opinion of gaming in general. Is that for real reasons, or is it a game that is just overly familiar and thus out of fashion? Like Catan, which is a game that was fantastically popular to the point that some think it revived board gaming in general, but is now looked down on as substandard by many. What if Monopoly was a brand new game introduced today? It has simulation of real estate dealing, varied strategies according to property types and values, and the ability to enhance some of those values via houses and hotels. It has random microtransactions via chance and community chest that strongly affect the early game but lessen in importance towards the end. The use of quirky shapes as player markers rather than just boring colors. The greed-enhancing value of stacks of paper money rather than cardboard chits. Property cards big enough to contain all their own states right on them rather than in lookup tables. It has a theme that carries throughout. The copy I recall playing as a kid even had a cardboard insert for the box that helped organize the money in the bank. The negatives, of course, would be harsh player elimination, randomness of moving according to thrown dice, and often long playing times. I think if today's players weren't pre-biased against it, that it would have its fans. It would be viewed as heavy and perhaps dry, but people would see several strategies to pursue and thus be willing to play it again. I'm not saying it would be the best game ever, but that it's much better than its current reputation. What do you think?
I think you're wrong, unfortunately. I think Monopoly, if it came out today, would be highly dismissed. It's a roll and move, so even, let's say Monopoly didn't exist and it came, people were already predisposed against roll and move games. I think
True.
The luck is very high. The complexity is pretty high. It would have a hard time. The only reason Monopoly gets is the pass it does by the quote-unquote mass market is that they already all know how to play. It's like a tradition. It's passed on from parent to child.
That's true. It would be destroyed for component quality, for sure.
Sure. I would look at it and say, wow, this game is really long considering the amount of luck that's within it. I would also argue the theme doesn't make any sense. I would stop driving around a city if I kept paying money all the time.
It's true. I'm just going to hang out here. Yeah. I mean, I agree that Monopoly should not be derided quite as strongly as it is. There are merits to the game, and a lot of that does come from its reputation as being overly long and from people playing the wrong rules. Because it's been passed down, people, a good significant portion of people don't know how to play Monopoly by the correct rules.
Sure.
But I do agree with Tom here that if it were just thrown out into the marketplace today, I think it would be criticized for a lot of those downsides that Kirk mentions. And the possible length of the game, the fact that the game, if you're playing the basic version, doesn't end until everyone is bankrupt, that can make the game last a good bit, even if you are playing correctly and cutthroat and the way you're supposed to play it. But I agree. It should be higher in people's estimation than it really is.
I'm actually going to allow Eric to read the next couple questions.
Gee, thanks, Tom. Yeah, I looked ahead. So several have written in. Let's start with Stephen. Just finished listening to the latest podcast and the H Top 10. Generally, I would side with Eric. Thank you, Stephen. But Tom is right. What? Le Havre should be under L and not H, no matter the circumstance. While Eric is correct that Le Havre translates to the harbor and the is generally dropped while alphabetizing, Tom is also incorrect that it should be Tom is also incorrect that it should be under L simply because of the French and Dutch. Le Havre the game is named after the French port city of Le Havre. Being the name of a city, it is a proper noun, and it would be improper to the le as simply being the. Perhaps a top 10 of the cities would be in order. Okay, The Hague, Le Havre, the Dales, the Dalles, La Crosse, the Bronx. Okay, so that's Stephen. And then Joe in London. Tom, I think you are right and everyone else is wrong. Le Havre is a place.
Which no one ever says, by the way.
Le Havre, and everyone else is wrong.
Right.
It no more belongs under the letter H than Los Angeles belongs under A or Des Moines under M. So there. Although you are wrong about Caverna. Agricola is the superior game because occupations.
Eric.
Yes. Anyway, Joe, he says he's in London, which is an L game just like Le Havre. So, all right, I am willing, moving forward, to say that geographical names should be alphabetized under the first letter. However, the problem with this is that Board Game Geek alphabetizes them under the other word. So in researching, say, our top 10 What are we up to now? I games. If there is a the is something that shouldn't be an I game, it's going to show up under my I list because that's how it's showing up in Board Game Geek.
Well, so Board Game Geek needs to fix this too. Then, here's the thing. I wasn't actually feeling that strongly on this anyway. In fact, I felt pretty bad. But the Los Angeles things, that argument convinced me that I was right, which is
that is a pretty good, because I would not put Los Angeles under A.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
But I think Le Havre is kind of like the only game that falls in this category. El Grande is the other one that we talked about.
Yep.
That one's kind of tricky too. But once we get to the thes, so this is what I'm doing for the Dice Tower library. For our book that has all these games listed in them, I'm putting them under both. So like the Castle of Mad King Ludwig will be under the Castle of Mad King Ludwig, and it will also be under Castle. So whichever one you look up, you'll find it.
Think of the extra paper you're using, really.
I'm going to live with myself.
No, I think that's probably good. It depending on how you look it up, both ways you're going to find the information you need.
All right, Jared says tons of board games seem to play best at 4. Hey, I think we just talked about this in Tapestry. Board is specifically designed for exactly 4, and it seems common that when a game says it plays up to 5 players, or sometimes even more, it's really best at 4. It's not just board games either. Hundreds of video games are designed for 4-player play too. In fact, it was a selling point for the N64 that it came with 4 controller ports built in, so you didn't need to buy a special accessory to play 4-player games.
I think it's a space thing.
I was to say it's the square aspect, the rectangle aspect.
You can sit one person on each end of the table if you're playing a 4-player game. There's lots of card tables that are literally a square. And then the video game thing, 4 is about as many individual screens that you want to put in one television screen. If you have more players than that, you tend to need a local area network or an online circumstance where you're only seeing your view and playing with many other players with their own screens. If you're trying to all sit around one table or all sit around one TV screen, 4 just works very well.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, when you play a 4-player game, and this is mostly Euro games, right, where you have a lot of stuff. Where does the 5th player sit?
Yeah.
Have you ever sat at a corner, and had to reach around another player to get to the board?
I usually don't have to sit in the corner. We'll put one on the end. I mean, we're also using a rectangular table. So we'll have one on the end and then 2 on each side. And then the remaining...
down?
And we'll slide the board down closer to that 5th player that's on the end. And then the rest of the table is where we put all the stuff. But if it was a square table fitting a 5th player, I might go with the corners. Have 2 players sit on the corners and then side for the other 3. But if you have a player mat, that can be really tricky.
Now that's the main reason, right? But the other reason is a lot of games just really work well with 4.
Yeah.
It's the symmetry of the board. Maybe you start in 4 different areas. You had a 5th person. It's harder to spread 5 people out more evenly. There's a lot of games that play great with 5. Don't get me wrong. But 4, I don't know what it is. Also, I've heard rumors that initially a lot of Euro games, which came from Germany, were geared towards a family of 4.
Right.
And that was the thing. Mom, dad, boy, girl. I don't know. That'd be that exactly right. But I mean, parent, child.
A family of 4.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's just that they're designed that way. It's a nice, even marketing space. There are few games that don't hit that 4-player sweet spot, other than solo and 2-player games. It's pretty rare that there's only a 3-player only game. They do exist, but it's rare. Most games will play 4 players.
Yeah.
Dan has a question that's actually very similar to one we just talked about. You know how they have the director's commentary and behind-the-scenes extras that come with DVDs of popular movies? As I play many of my favorite games, I often wonder, what were they thinking? Or how did they come up with this stuff? Which game would you most like to have the game designer sit down and play the game with you while he or she explained the thought process they used to design the game? I was actually thinking, it would be interesting to see one of your live playthroughs, Tom, then narrated by the designer.
So,
here's where they made a huge mistake.
I did not design the game to be played this way, folks. Avert your eyes.
We never intended for this to happen. None of our playtesters did such a boneheaded move.
Interestingly, after my review of a popular game recently, I got a long email about my review from a popular designer of another game. And it was really interesting. And I'm being ambiguous, but I did ask this particular designer if we could do a video on this subject. And I might even try to get him on our podcast at some point because it was interesting. But I don't know. I don't really care what the designer thinks about their game. I know it sounds weird, but I mean, I just want to know if the game's fun or not. I have talked to a lot of designers. See, I guess I'm very fortunate in this regard. I've dealt with this. I'll be like, why did you do this? Oh, I did this because of this, and this. Some designers are really open. If you ever talk to Tom Lemon for Race for the Galaxy, he'll talk your ear off about why he designed things a specific way.
Yeah.
Richard Launius will do it. Most designers are really open. This is why I did this.
Sure. Because it's the part of the process that you don't usually get to see. I'm sure they're happy to talk about it. Jeff has discussed this in some of his Game Tech segments about issues that have come up in his design projects and how they tried to deal with them and whether it was a success or not. I find those really fascinating.
Yeah. Although Hunter says this is what Tom needs, the designer pointing out rules errors.
Thanks a lot.
Hunter. Thanks. All right, that's our questions. Let's jump to our top 10. Spookily.
Why don't we have a tale of horror in this episode?
Yeah, that's true. Bum, ba-dum, ba-da-ba-ba. I got all these amiibos sitting around my desk.
Whoa.
Yeah, because I'm playing Link to the Past, so I'm scanning all of them to get my free goodies.
Ooh. Link to the Past has goodies?
Not Link to the Past, sorry. Breath of the Wild.
Ah, yes. I know that.
This is like this is still one of the scariest monsters there is.
Which one is that? Oh, the Guardian.
These things, when you see them,
Oh, yeah.
they just like walk by and then they turn and look at you. And you're like, oh, I'm screwed.
And the music changes.
Yeah, that piano music, oh, it's great. This thing is super spooky.
I haven't played Breath of the Wild in a while.
I started playing on my trip to Iceland, and that was a mistake.
I want to. My son beat it, and I'm not letting that bother me at all. But I have yet to do so.
Yeah.
He also beat the Goose Game before I did.
Okay, we're not recording yet, but seriously, is this like one of those things that people are being hipster about to be hipster? It feels like it. It feels like it's it's a Goose Game. That's much cooler than Mario.
I think it is a unique theme. It is a very silly game. I mean, the previews, the trailers for this game made it look hilarious. And just that you get to be this annoying goose and do these, torment these people in really funny ways. The game itself is really well done. It is, however, very short, but it's only like $12, $15. So I think we've gotten quite a bit of use out of it. And the finale of the main quest made me laugh out loud. So I liked it.
I'm hoping that it ends with a Christmas dinner.
I haven't completed it yet, so I don't know if that does happen.
That would be...
God bless us, everyone.
Now cut the turkey. All right. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see. It's fine. Okay. I don't mind. It just seems this game popped on my feed.
Yeah. Everybody's talking about it, and there's memes about it and everything now. But it is a well done game for sure. It is, however, very short. You'll finish it in like a weekend if you play it.
Someone asked, "Am I going to play Link's Awakening Remastered?" Probably not. I would have a hard time going back, I think, to playing that after playing the open world of Breath of the Wild. And Breath of the Wild is going to keep me occupied for, who knows, I'm like only at 30 shrines right now. So I think there's still like 60 more, so I got plenty.
Yeah.
And I don't play that much. I play a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
All righty, let's crank this out, Eric. I'm tired.
Let's do it. Yeah, me too.
Here we go. So horror-themed games. There is... Well, sure. You know, I do distinctly remember when I first got heavily into the hobby and people asked this question, it was kind of like there's a few. There's really a lot now.
Sure.
And I do worry that many of them are basically two themes. Zombies and or Cthulhu.
It's true. There are a lot of those. In fact, when we were doing the research here, there were a lot of... And they also seem to attract lots of expansions for just this style of game. Tends to have a lot of little minis, a lot of little mini expansions. There's a lot of scrolling as I was looking through this category on Board Game Geek.
Sure. So I picked games that I thought that had a horror theme in them. There's a few games where I think maybe the horror theme's in the background or not really strongly there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying these games are necessarily scary games. They're not. Well, there's a few that are, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I was definitely making a distinction between horror games and games that would be appropriate for Halloween. So, like the cute ghost games. No, I wanted a sense of suspense, maybe not jump scare terror, but a feeling that I'm sort of off kilter and off balance, like I would if I were watching a horror movie.
Well, I hate horror movies, but yes, I don't disagree. Actually, this is a list that we have a fairly high crossover on. 5 games.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, let's get started.
Let's begin with a sync-up. Betrayal at House on the Hill really embraces the whole horror genre. It starts out as a simple exploration game, and at some point, everything twists, and it becomes, most of the time, a one versus many game. Sometimes a team game, sometimes it's a co-op against the board, but there is some sort of traitor, the betrayer, that then goes off and looks at their secret book, and everybody else looks at their secret book, and it becomes a different game entirely with different goals. Sometimes it is brilliant. Sometimes it doesn't work right. But the times it is brilliant, really, it creates those wonderful moments of terror sometimes, and mistrust. And, when those moments come when you're flipping over the omen cards, which may cause the haunt to start, there is a certain amount of apprehension when you flip that card. Maybe you want to be the betrayer, or maybe you don't. And you flip it, do I want it? Am I really? Am I going to be the bad guy this time? It's pretty neat. No,
I like being the bad guy always. I like this too. It definitely has some problems. I actually haven't finished Betrayal Legacy, although I think that would probably replace this. It's pretty much the same game. They just add bits and pieces as you go through it. But yeah, fun. Betrayal House on the Hill, a lot of fun. Both of our number 10s.
My number 9 is Dead of Winter from Plaid Hat Games. I think this is the only zombie game on my list. Yeah, it is. And
this
it's not
number 11.
Okay. It's not as much a zombie game as it is a resource management and crisis management game. The zombies are much more of a not faceless, because they are zombies that are trying to break down your barricades, and you have to get them out of the way and keep your barricades up and strong and manage them just like you would anything else. The real terror comes when you travel anywhere in Dead of Winter, and you have to roll that 12-sided die that can injure or even kill you instantly, which is there's terror there. Like, I don't want to lose my person. I really liked the Sparky the dog. Anyway, Dead of Winter, number 9.
I feel like there's a story there. All right, my number 9 has a super scary box cover, and that's The Faceless. Have you seen this one, Eric?
Mm-mm.
So The Faceless has some demonic-looking guy in the front, and that's all. There's not even the words of the game. It's The Faceless. What you are a group of kids, like a gang of kids.
Okay.
And there's this evil faceless creature that is kidnapping kids, taking them into this weird realm. So you're going to go into this realm, and you're going to try not to get caught by this faceless figure who's moving around, and there's these other evil kids that are in the background, and you on the board, your playing piece is a compass, as in the thing that tells you north, south, east, west.
Okay.
The faceless piece and these kids outside the board all have magnets in them.
Oh boy.
Your party must move many times in the direction that your compass is pointing. So the closer the faceless gets to you, the more you're drawn to him. So you need to move these kids on the outside of the board so that their magnets pull you away from him.
Huh.
It's a really cool game, and it's a cooperative game. It's really a neat idea. I like it a lot, but it definitely has that horror theme of this boogeyman coming after kids. So that's The Faceless, my number 9.
Yeah. And the concept of a mysterious force also controlling you is kind of cool, this invisible thing.
I think you would like this, because I think you would like the gimmick, the magnets.
Yeah, cool.
Let's go to old games.
Number 8 is Fearsome Floors. I've talked about this one a lot, and this is the most cartoony of the games on my list, but it is still running from a monster and sort of hiding behind columns and hoping that they go the other way and be drawn toward other players. It's got the silly illustrations and sort of the pop culture references, but the monster's sliding on blood pools and pushing rocks and crushing people and coming after you next. Fearsome Floors, number 8.
Yes, I agree. I like this one. My older game is Mall of Horror. This is actually, there was a reworking of this called City of Horror, which is also good too, but I think I like the concept of Mall of Horror. This is a zombie game. You're all inside a mall, and zombies are attacking, and you will, over the course of the game, zombies are going to start breaking down the door to one of the rooms that you have some of your people in, and then you all vote who you throw to the zombies.
Okay.
As you can tell, it's a game that everyone gets along in. Because we'll be like, hey, Sam and Mandy, Eric's character's really not contributing to life. Let's throw him out.
Uh-huh.
And that's what happens. It's a mean game, but it's fun, and it has, even though the zombie thing is kind of, in the background, in the front, it's pretty fun, just that whole, that silliness of attacking other people and throwing them to the wolves, or zombies in this case. Mall of Horror.
My number 7 will show up on Tom's list very soon, but I still have some actions left, so I'm going to explore this room further.
My number 7 is another zombie game. Actually, it's the last zombie game on my list, and that's Carnival Zombie. This is one where there's a carnival in Venice, all zombiedom has broken loose, and every player in the game is armed with, munitions for some reason or other. So you're moving through Venice, and each night you will stop and make camp, and then many zombies will come. You'll pull out your sniper rifles and machine guns and go bum, 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 and just take zombies out right and left. Really fun game. I like the whole Last Alamo stand against zombies. I'm surprised no one's made a movie of that yet. Zombie Alamo. But anyhow, really fun and entertaining, but also a cool cooperative game. I'm looking forward to seeing the reprint soon. That's Carnival Zombie.
My number 6 is Arkham Horror, the card game. Now, this is a game I have not delved into. This is one of the living card game systems. You can play it cooperatively or multiplayer if you have enough of the cards. And they're all sort of module-based, story-based adventures that you go on and trying to solve mysteries. What really gets me here is the unknown in Arkham Horror, the card game. You don't really know what's going on until you've explored locations and achieved tasks and picked up clues around, and things sort of escalate as you go, and you may take an action to flip a card over not having any idea what will happen when you do so, and that can be a little scary, not to mention that the theme is, that whole Lovecraft mythos thing, which is scary. Anyway, Arkham Horror, the card game, is my number 6.
Yep. I just don't like it as much as Eric does. My number 6 is Eric's number 7, and that's Escape Tales, The Awakening. I was surprised you put this on. I didn't think anyone else would. Oh,
it's spooky, though. There's some real, creepy stuff going on in this game.
Yeah, so basically, this is an escape room game, and at the beginning, you are a husband, a grieving husband. Your wife is dead for reasons unknown at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And your daughter is in a coma. It's just not a great time. So you decide to last-ditch effort to do some sort of creepy ritual where you go into the subconscious of your past/daughters. I don't know what you're doing exactly.
Yeah.
But you like go into your past, but it's kind of like the Upside Down and Stranger Things type of world. And you meet your dead wife at one point, make horrific decisions. It's all an escape game, right? There's these puzzles and things, but the story behind it, you're like, ah! It's really dark. Yeah. I believe there are 10 different endings. 9 of them are awful, and 1 is okay.
Yeah. I keep intending to go back and attempt, because we came close. We got, I think, one of the close to good endings. But I can't bring myself to do it again.
It's like the endings, I don't want to spoil them, but the endings, the good kind of endings are essentially like, if me and Eric were like fighting against pirates, and I'm like, Eric, you sail off and have a happy life. Meanwhile, I'm tortured the rest of my life by the pirates.
Oh.
That would be what we would consider a good ending.
I mean, as long as I'm okay, though.
Sure, thanks. That's Escape Tales, The Awakening, and I have the next Escape Tales sitting right here. I'm very excited to play it.
Oh, you do? I'm getting one at Spiel. That's one of my must-gets when that's there.
Where is it?
It's like a video game or a digital theme.
It's Escape Tales Low Memory.
There we go.
And I said, is this not as dark as the last one? And they said, it's not quite as dark, which was not that reassuring.
Yeah, you're right. That's sort of non-committal. Number 5 is another sync-up on our list. We both chose Escape from the Aliens in Outer Space. Some of you are aliens, some of you are humans. You don't really know who's who, and you're moving around secretly. Run quickly.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, it's really scary. This is one of the few games that's really scary to me as a human. Because you're sitting there and you're like moving around on a board, and you can pick where you move for the most part, and then you announce where you've moved to everybody else, but you can lie occasionally.
Yes.
And you're just sitting there and you hear other people moving. You're like, are they getting close to me? It sounds like they're getting close to me. Are they an alien? Or maybe they're just another human who's as scared as I am. Oh, it's so nerve-wracking. So this is the game for me that is Alien, the board game, essentially. Not the only one on the list of this type, but the one that I picked, and that's Escape from the Aliens in Outer Space.
The game that I picked to be Alien, the board game, is pretty much Alien, the board game. Legendary Encounters, Alien, in which you're working together to complete whatever the scenario is, and the base box has the 4 Alien movies that you get to recreate. What I really like and makes it a good horror game is the way the bad cards come onto the board. In basic Legendary, all the villains come out face up. They just get revealed. But Legendary Encounters has this system where they all show up face down. And so you know something is coming down the corridor, but you don't know what it is. And you can spend resources, attack points to flip over the cards. And sometimes you should, because...
I always do, because I need to know.
Oh, I need to know what it is. Sometimes if you reveal something that's good, then you get the benefit of that good thing. But if you wait until it reaches right in front of you and it's a good thing, you don't get any benefit. Plus, some of the aliens are really bad if you don't reveal them first and know they're coming. So, yeah, try and reveal the unknown as best you can in Legendary Encounters. Alien, number 4.
My number 4 is Eldritch Horror. This is one of my Cthulhu games on the list. This is the replacement for me for Arkham Horror, because you're gallivanting all over the world fighting Cthulhu and his ilk. It's very hard. It's a big cooperative game with 600 billion expansions. And there's so much going on in Eldritch Horror. I have a great time playing it. We'll probably lose, but it has that Arkham Horror feel to me, mixed a little bit with Indiana Jones, which makes it more palatable for myself. That's Eldritch Horror, number 4.
I have yet to play either Eldritch or Arkham Horror. I haven't had the opportunity to sit down and devote that amount of time to it.
It's a lot, and you never will.
Yeah.
You never will. I know.
It's likely I won't, yeah.
With the 6 billion games coming out all the time, you'll never play it, Eric.
One of these days, Richard Lanius is going to be like, hey, you want to play Arkham Horror? And then maybe. Number 3 is on Tom's list, and if you've been paying attention over the last couple of months, you probably already know what it is.
My number 3 is higher on Eric's list, and it's I think I have nothing, Eric.
Oh, did your app crash?
I don't know. Thank you.
Number 2 for me is Nyctophobia. This is the game that you play not in the dark, but blindfolded. There are blackout glasses, and the hunted players are playing by touch with sort of textured pieces. They're fighting their way through a maze, a jungle, a forest, whatever, and one player who can see is hunting them down. And there's card play, and you can run, and you can throw things at the bad guy. But that sense of not being able to see everything, to have to get a sense of your surroundings by touch alone, that isolation of being with the blackout glasses is psychologically very, very strong. It is disconcerting to play this game. And having that emotion, that feeling, really does achieve that horror sense for Nyctophobia, my number 2.
I agree. I just don't feel like the game is strong enough. That's why I didn't make my list. But it's a good choice. I considered the idea of it. It's unique. It's cool. It's just not good enough of a game, I think. My number 2 is the newest game on my list, and it was Eric's number 3. Oh, right. And that's
it's right there. Like, oh.
Horrified is my new game that I teach new people. It's a game I can play with my kids because it's spooky, but not too spooky, right? Yeah. Because it's a cooperative game against the Universal Studio monsters: Frankenstein and his bride, Dracula, the Wolfman, the creature from the Black Lagoon, Dracula, and the Invisible Man. And you pick 2, 3, or 4 of these guys. You got to fight in different ways. Each one requires a different way to defeat them. Like Frankenstein and his bride, you need to just get them to realize they're human and fall in love. Dracula, you need to put a stake through his heart. It is what it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I really like it. It's solid. It's a very straightforward game. It's on the pandemic level of cooperative games, and the theme is really strong, great production values.
Yes, this is one that I feel is going on my gift-giving list for the foreseeable future. Hopefully my brothers aren't listening to this, because I think you're getting this for Christmas.
You meet your brother, like, did you listen to my podcast? No. Oh, good.
Good. Number 1 for me was Tom's number 3, and that is Mansions of Madness. It's the unknown that really gets me in this. This is the second edition that uses the app, so you don't see much of what you are given. You have no real idea what the map is. At the beginning of this, you don't know what's going on. You are in this situation. You are investigating some spooky goings-on. And every time you open a door, you never know whether it's going to be somebody to talk to, or a bunch of monsters, or when you walk past this one thing or discover this one object, what is going to change in the course of the game. I am off-kilter throughout every game of Mansions of Madness, and it really feels like I'm living in a horror movie. That's why it's my number 1.
It's a pretty solid game, and I agree with everything Eric said there. That's the thing, it's just that soundtrack and everything really brings it to life, and you're sitting there going, oh. So that's Eric's number 1, my number 3. My number 1 is Ghost Stories. Ghost Stories, which was just remade, actually. It's at Essen, it's going to be remade.
Oh.
I believe it's called Last Bastion now. It's a fantasy-style theme, but the monsters are still very scary looking. But
okay.
Ghost Stories is a game in which you're a bunch of monks defending a village against really, really scary ghosts that are coming in and attacking. You need to fight them off without dying, and if you pull it off, then you win. But you probably won't, so you'll probably die. It's a great cooperative game. I love it. So that is Ghost Stories.
Yeah, I think this may be my number 11. There is certainly a sense of peril as those ghosts close in on you.
All right, let's see what the People's Choice says. Number 10, Zombicide. Number 9, Horrified. Actually, I was surprised this made the list for People's Choice, but
no, I think it's getting a lot of play.
Getting out there.
Yeah.
Number 8, Elder Sign. Number 7, Fury of Dracula.
Yeah. Okay.
Number 6, Betrayal at House on the Hill. Number 5, Arkham Horror, the card game. Number 4, Ghost Stories. Number 3, Eldritch Horror. Number 2, Mansions of Madness. And number 1 by quite a bit, actually, when I look at the votes, was Dead of Winter.
Wow. That's cool.
So a lot of similarities. Obviously, there's a big fan of Zombicide and Fury of Dracula. You know, both of those games are fine games, just didn't make my list. Elder Sign is a great game. I don't think the horror theme's that strong in it, though.
Yeah, Elder Sign it made my short list, but I ended up backing off of it just because you don't really feel, it's just sort of a dice game variant co-op. It's more a stats game than it is feeling like I'm exploring anything.
Well, that is that, folks. Thanks so much for listening to us. That's our horror games. Go to our forums. Go to Facebook, our Facebook group, or our forums of Board Game Geek. Tell us what your favorite horror games are. Also, me, Sam, and Z did a video version of this list. Which I know Eric didn't watch, or he would have known my picks. Oh, wait, he did know my picks because I put them in the list.
Yes, you usually telegraph that.
1 week, folks. Sign up for Dice Tower East. But if you can't wait, you can always sign up for Dice Tower West right now. Either way, there's lots of stuff. You can always, hopefully on Thursday nights, every other Thursday night, you can see us recording this. So I think we have a special guest in 2 weeks, Eric and me. But once we have that confirmed for sure, we'll announce it.
Yeah.
But until then, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Can I do one more horrific laugh before we're done?
I know you want to. Do it.
So I've been wanting to do that for a while.
All right. Cool beans. Folks who are out there watching us, thanks so much. We'll see you all later.